Hi, everyone. So amazing to be here. Let's kick this off. Thank you, F3, for organizing and holding the space for these critical discussions. And thanks to everyone for showing up to the panel, Empowering the Future, Investing in Regeneration, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Education. My name is Anne Brody. I'm a PhD candidate at McGill University, and I study blockchain governance. I'm thrilled to be moderating this discussion with these four amazing and talented women. So on my left, I have Hetal Patel from Metaverse Group. I have Saliha Jawade from Topple. Then I have Mila Bozanov from Regenerative Finance. And finally, Natasha Ali from Ali Consulting. So today's panel encapsulates our collective vision for an inclusive, innovative, and transformative blockchain future. We stand on the precipice of a technological revolution that has the power to reshape industries, economies, and societies. But in this transformative phase, we must remember that the true potential of the revolution can only be harnessed when we weave inclusivity into its very fabric. And so these women will speak to this more today. As we navigate this dialogue, let us not only recognize the current challenges and barriers that exist, but also celebrate the opportunities that lie ahead. So ladies, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us more about what you do.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. What a way to close off the second day of the Blockchain Futurist Conference with these amazing ladies that I've been working with for the past year. My name is Hetal. I am a sales and marketing professional for over 10 years now. I currently work for Metaverse Group, as she mentioned, where we are working tirelessly to nail down adoption. And of course, working with these women for the last year and a bit as a part of F3, basically looking to onboard as many women as possible into the space through education, network, capital, and of course, throwing really exciting conferences and events to bring everybody together. So nice to be here today.
Hi everyone, this is Saliha again. So I have been in software for about 10 and something years now. I am currently serving as the operations lead at Topple, which is a blockchain ecosystem developed to facilitate impact economies globally. I'm also the tech lead at F3 Ventures, where I help look for innovative technologies within the space, and as well as hybridized sort of technologies with AI, and possibly more different paradigms in the future. Our goal at F3 is to create novel funding strategies and instruments which truly cater to the themes that we want to serve, which is diversity and inclusion, of course, education, and regenerative everything, regenerative ecosystems. Okay, I'll pass it on to you, Mila.
Hello, everybody. First, I just wanted to say thank you all for being here, showing up, being a part of our amazing community at F3 and beyond. Super stoked to be sharing stage with these amazing women here today who have had the privilege and honor of being a part of their team for a little bit. But I'd actually really like to begin with a land acknowledgement, something that I haven't heard at our event just yet. Yes, because when we talk about inclusivity, when we're talking about regeneration, it is not without consideration of our indigenous peoples of this beautiful land we call home. So I'll be reading this bit just so that I can pronounce the titles the right way. The city of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Oceaniabeg, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And we are now a nation home to many First Nations groups, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And why land acknowledgements are hella important is it is to recognize that there have been systems in place long before anything that we're building here in this world. And we lean on each other, we lean on community and these principles to design the way that we are and create new futures together. So I just wanted to say that little bit. Yes. So back on me. I'm a founder at Regenerative Finance, and what that is it's first and foremost, it's education, and it's really a group trying to put forth just this idea of regenerative principles and what regenerative design really means in the world that we're living in. So we're actually looking to create a fund that is based in regenerative principles. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in our actual panel discussion of what that is and unpack that a bit. But the idea being that we are not separate from our natural spaces, and we are always building consideration of people and planet. So that's just a little bit about me. I'll pass this on to Tash.
Hello? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mila, for passing it off to me, as well as for the land acknowledgement. Can always count on you for being so inclusive, so thank you for that. Hello everyone. So my name is Natasha. I go by Tasha. I'll keep my introduction really short. I know we're short on time. So a little bit about me. My background is in law. I started my career as a human rights lawyer, and then I got quickly tired of forcing people to care about people. So then I decided to pivot into an industry that allowed me to work with people who actually understood the value of people. So I actually pivoted to management consulting, and now I work in diversity and inclusion. I'm really excited about what's happening in the blockchain space, because for the very first time, it's as though my prayers have been answered since I've been in law school, where we finally have a tool to create the world that I've always envisioned. Blockchain provides this opportunity for us to redistribute power and resources in a way unlike ever before, and all of our social systems are just baked on top of that. So when we really redesign the ground floor of the economic model, we have this potential for really creating inclusive or really harnessing the potential of diversity and creating inclusive environments so that we can access all of the benefits that come from inclusivity. That's a little bit about me. Would love to talk to any of you guys who are curious about this space or D&I, how to leverage D&I in this space, and really excited about this conversation that we're going to have.
Yes.
All right. So let's dive into the actual discussion, and we'll start off with you, Sal. So the first question is how can we foster a culture of diversity and inclusion around social impact within the blockchain industry, and why is it important for the future of this industry?
Yeah, I think it's a really great place to start, because a lot of the work that's done around regenerative finance is around this idea of a shared pool of common resources. And I think now with Web3 being as prevalent as it has become in the last few years or so, it's really important for us to keep assessing what those resources includes. And I think that it pretty much includes everything. And in terms of inclusion being a core tenet of blockchain technology, I mean, if we think about it from an ideological sort of perspective, blockchain was built to empower people to make autonomous choices. That, yes, they might have been in the financial space, but I think that with the tokenization of assets can be in essentially any space of our life. And it's extremely important for us to be mindful of those principles as we build technology products and technology systems, as well as the governance and the policies around those. And I mean, it's one of those things that I think every company is working towards in their own way, but the way that we at Topple are working towards it is to create a network of do-gooders, people who are motivated by social impact, who care about positive sum economics and creating outcomes that benefit the most number of people. So it really goes down to the mission statement and the vision that you create for your businesses, and then following through on it throughout the value chain, end to end. Who are the people that you work with? Who are your investors? Who are the suppliers? Who are your customers? Are you including voices that are not heard in the mainstream? So yeah, that would be where I would start.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking about the voices that are not heard in the mainstream, Huddle, maybe you could address this question. In what ways can we assure that blockchain technology is accessible to underrepresented communities, and how can it contribute to their empowerment?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about this question, first thing obviously comes to mind is education, right? We want to be able to educate these underrepresented groups about the technology. But then it came to my mind that there is a huge problem of access to education. When you think about underrepresented groups, you're typically talking about groups that have a hard time, maybe financially, and may have to think about so many other things before they can even think about this new technology, right? It definitely has the power to empower these groups, but what happens if you're charging them thousands of dollars for a course? What happens if you're charging them thousands of dollars to attend a conference, to network with people, right? So, they're not really thinking about how to open up a wallet. They're thinking about, well, am I gonna have to pay for childcare? Am I gonna have to take time off? Am I gonna have to, pay for an Uber or pay for these expensive meals at these nice venues that we've chosen to have our events at? So really it still comes down to the same problems and challenges that we've had for a long time that we need to still address before we can even say, okay, we want to educate them on these topics, but how do we get them there, right? So that's a big part of it. And on the other hand, the technology itself has the power to really empower these groups as well. We've seen this shift from Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, where a few hoard all the resources and the power, right? And so the idea is with this technology is that we can have them, these underrepresented communities, bring their communities together, raise money for their communities, and decide what to do and where to put these funds and how to actually, lift their communities up. So, definitely the technology is there to empower, but I would say it's two-pronged. Let's figure out the access part. Let's make sure we make things affordable for them. I know F3, we've done a conference in the past where we made sure we welcomed 1,000+ women into Web3, and we didn't charge them a lot to come to the conference. You know what I mean? So we wanted to make sure that wouldn't be an issue. We included, huh? We gave them their money back, exactly. We ensured we got childcare for them so people people can actually make it to these conferences. So just thinking about these sort of barriers, I think, is a huge, huge deal. And once we can get through those barriers, I think, the technology itself has the power to really uplift these communities. And they can give back, and they can create their own products and services that will cater to them. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Woo. Yeah, I definitely think that self-sovereignty is a really big part of blockchain, and just the fact that you can organize your own thing as a community. But we certainly don't want to be repeating the same mistakes from Web 2, and I do see them getting regurgitated in new forms here in Web 3. But this also leads nicely into the next question, which is, what are some effective strategies for promoting education and skills development in blockchain, particularly for individuals who may not have traditional backgrounds in computer science or finance? Hetal, maybe you could speak to that again?
Yeah, sure. Start off, if you guys want to jump in, feel free to. But I think, mentorship is a big thing, technical or not. I think it's always good to have somebody that, you can look up to, that's been through that experience, that can kind of help you navigate, these interesting times. Definitely, when I first started learning, about blockchain, it was very difficult. There was a lot of disjointed materials. Now there are courses and entire syllabuses that can help you learn these things, but definitely having a mentor is helpful. I think another underutilized tool is the idea of incentivization. If we want people to really get excited about this stuff and learn and take the initiative, I think, we've started to hear about play to earn, learn to earn. Incentives are really, really powerful to get people who maybe might have a little bit of a barrier or even a self-perceived barrier to learning technical skills. Incentivize them, make it fun to learn. So yeah, those are kind of like the top of my mind lately.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned incentive, which leads very well into the next question around design. So this question is addressed towards Natasha. So how can we design our products and teams to be more inclusive? And what are some inclusive design strategies that we can implement to build a culture around that to drive organizational success?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. So if we want to design our teams and our services or our products to become more inclusive, the first step is for us to be intentional about that process. Because inclusion is not an outcome, it's a process. It's a design process. And then accessibility, equity is the outcome, right? So if we want to create an inclusive environment, we have to design an inclusive environment. If we want to create inclusive products, we have to design inclusive products. And so there are a number of different inclusive design frameworks, of course, that you can leverage that have a number of different principles that you can sort of bake into the design process when you're designing your systems, when you're designing your processes, the way that you essentially run your business and or your services that you can leverage that can really help you to be able to align your business practice or align really your service offerings to the value, if you should choose to hold it, of inclusion. If I was going to pick one of the principles that I think is a really great actionable takeaway, it's solve for one, and then the benefit applies to many. So what does that look like in practice? So if we're hosting an event here today, and so we want our event to be accessible. We want it to be accessible to the greatest number of people. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to design for the permanent disabilities, because then we're going to capture everybody who's essentially dealing with something similar, but that may not be of a permanent nature. So let me give you a tangible example. So we want to make sure that our premises is accessible physically, and we want to do that so that we can make sure the person that's in the wheelchair that has a permanent disability is able to access the space equally as someone who's able-bodied. Now, what happens by us doing that? Like, what other benefits come from us doing that? Well, we also get to capture the person who's in a temporary situation, who maybe had a knee surgery that month and that's on temporary crutches. Or we also get to then include or make accessible the venue to a woman who's just given birth, who needs to use a stroller. So, by really, it's otherwise known as the edge effect abundance, right? There's so much abundance that's available when we design for the edges, because we then cast the net wider, and then we're able to gather so much more and include so much more. So that's just one takeaway, one tangible strategy, but of course the main thing here is to be really intentional and to then really ensure that these values of inclusion, accessibility, equity, that they're embedded throughout the organization, and the way that we can do that is first by having them laid out in our corporate values. So that's just a little bit.
I'd just like to add, bring an expert in, like Natasha, for example. Bring an expert in, have those conversations. You don't have to figure it out by yourself, right? Like, every event, every company, everything that you do should have this consideration at the beginning. Who do I need to talk to figure out, how can I make this the best experience for everybody? Because this is why we're all here and why we're here in Web3. We're here because we're wanting it to be accessible to the many, not to the few. So bring an expert in. That's my takeaway.
Definitely. So speaking of experts, the next question, Mila, you're the expert. What role can blockchain technology play in promoting sustainable practices and contributing to environmental regeneration? How can female founders lead the way in this area?
Beautiful. Thank you for that question. Thank you for the title too, expert. I'll take that. Although I am not. We're all just learning in this existence. Okay, so when we think about sustainability and blockchain and those worlds colliding, what I've seen in this space, as of late especially, is, again, taking those regenerative principles and putting them into practice using these new types of technologies out there. And what I mean by that is, if you've heard it and if you haven't, the ReFi movement. ReFi stands for regenerative finance. A little bit different than what you see in the DeFi space, because what we have on the finance side is that we're seeing tools like microfinancing being made available for individuals. And again, removing barriers of access for individuals. Perhaps there's no credit score involved. Perhaps there is no middleman being placed to be able to take away that opportunity for them to be able to get the funding that they need. We're also seeing a lot of grants being offered with no repayment terms. And that's huge in the regenerative finance space. And why that is because you're often going to be lending to individuals who they don't have capital, and the capital is going to be needed to develop things such as a regen farm project, or education being provided in your community. So you see it on the finance side, these tools being created that you haven't really seen before, and they really are in the consideration of really taking those principles of working with community. Tasha had mentioned the end abundance bit of it, where you have the collaboration to be able to get insight from different parts of your community and be able to involve them in the design so that nobody's left out in the consideration. And what I've saw, especially with ESG in blockchain, is we have this opportunity to really reimagine our carbon credit market. Because as I'm sure, as most of you are aware, what we see in ESG in the Web 2 space, it's pretty botched. You have corporations coming in, buying out a shit ton of credits, and they're still the heaviest polluters on our planet. Nothing is changing in the real world, And for the first time with blockchain, we have the opportunity to be honest about where that money is going. And how? Because what blockchain is rooted is in these principles of decentralization. Not one authority is making a decision. We are making a decision for all considered. We're also having this ability to be transparent about the transactions happening. So why that would benefit something like the carbon credit market is that if you have a corporation coming in, you can actually decentivize them from giving up their money and being able to say, hey, if you want to be able to be a player in this space, if you want to be able to be certified with this, a token in the form of a carbon credit, then you have to meet these certain tenets. And to be able to meet these certain tenets, you have to make real tangible action that's going to actually have impact on the community and our environment in the right way. So these are just these small things coming up, and it's not to discount everything else that's happening in the refi space. I've seen some incredible projects come out in how we're using digital identity. So we have a few projects around globally where we are offering assistance in the housing crisis, and how we do that is that a lot of individuals who face housing crisis, they do not readily have access to government ID. So if you have something in the form of digital identification, we do know in the same breath that the same individuals, 95% in Canada, have access to internet, either through library or through a friend or their own mobile devices. So having something like an NFT made available for them, giving them the opportunity to get tapped into their community in ways that they've never had before. And again, everything is rooted in these regenerative principles that have been around for a very long time, way before blockchain has been around, and it's borrowed from indigenomics, it's borrowed from these ideas of circular economy, and really being able to create and design this new world in tandem with everybody considered, and most importantly in how we're going to be able to move money around in this space. So I think with blockchain technology, being able to create funds, for example, that are rooted in these principles, you're being really nitpicky about who gets to come play there. So you're not seeing the same individuals land on the same cap tables being recycled, and the money doesn't really help benefit all of us. And when we think about it being female designed, I do really believe in the notion of ecofeminism, and that we are not separate from our natural spaces. But I think it's going to take everybody, and everybody being involved, especially our male allies, and being able to be, rallying with us and being a part of the conversation and being curious about these projects that are being brought up, because they're not just female-led and female-owned, it's community-owned and community-led, because it's in consideration of all of us. So I do think that we do have a role to play, but the bigger role is that being able to invite everybody in on the conversation and just, hear what we have to say and be able to showcase some of these amazing projects out there. So, yeah.
Woo. Yeah, We are unfortunately out of time today. Thank you, ladies, for your valuable insights. And thank you, audience, for joining us in this discussion. Your presence today signifies your commitment to shaping a future that's not just technologically advanced, but also socially progressive. If you have any questions, we'll be around. I'm happy to continue this conversation. And let's give another big round of applause to our panelists.